this is Dave from Global AV Sales. We get asked a fair few questions about different things in the audio visual industry, and so we decided we'll start putting together a few little videos like this one. We're going to kick off with probably one of the most common things that I find around the world a lot of people just don't understand. So I thought I'd go through some of the basics of speakers with their sensitivity and how that relates in terms of power requirements and maximum SPL outputs and the likes. And I've actually put together a little spreadsheet calculation tool for everybody, which hopefully will help. But let's just start with some of the basics. So an SPL or sensitivity rating on a loudspeaker, you will see often in the specs rated as a number in decibels. Usually for home cinema, it's probably going to be 95 to 97, 98 decibels. For a hi-fi loudspeaker, it could be anything from 86 decibels right through to around about, say maybe 90, 91 decibels. And what that is a rating of output based upon 1 watt of power or 2.83 volts measured at a 1 meter distance away by a microphone. So that's where you get your sensitivity or SPL rating from. Now, many of you will be aware that the human ear detects differences quite finely. However, the ones that want you to really pick it up, you need it to be a 3 dB increment. And in order to get a 3 decibel increment in output, you need to double the power. So if, as an example, you have, just for argument's sake of ease, a 100 decibel output on sensitivity of 1 watt of power at 1 meter, in order to get it to go to 103 decibels, you need to give it 2 watts. If you want to get it to go to 106 decibels, you go to 4 watts. You double each time. 8, 16, 2, and so on. But what a lot of people don't understand is that the distance is a real factor. So depending upon where your listening position is and your desired output, as an example, Dolby Atmos reference level is 105 decibel as a continuous with a headroom factor built in over and above. So if your seating position in a cinema, as an example, is 4 meters back, every doubling of distance from the original rating, you lose 6 decibels. So I'll show you this now. We'll go onto the spreadsheet because it's a nice, easy calculation sheet that will show you exactly how that works. Our spreadsheet that we were talking about, and you'll see up the top here, I've got Dolby Atmos reference level 105 dB, just as a reminder. The reason we have that there is that more often than not, this is used for people doing home cinema. Not that everybody wants a cinema that achieves that 105 dB reference level, because that is very high. However, you can just use this as a guideline. The other thing we've put there is, as again a reminder, minus 6 dB for each doubling of distance. And these green squares here basically represent a decibel SPL reading on a speaker at 1 watt 1 meter. So let's, for argument's sake here, I'm going to put in 95 dB. For those of you who don't know, Global AV Sales manage sales worldwide for Crick's residential cinema speakers. And so I know them reasonably well, so this is probably a nice, easy way for me to show the calculation. So at 95 dB for the LCRs, 1 watt 1 meter is the sensitivity rating. If we want to do a 3 dB increment and take it to 98 dB, we have to double the power to 2 watts. At another 3 dB, we go up to 4 watts. Now, as soon as we start doubling that distance, and let's be honest, nobody sits 1 meter away from the loudspeakers or screen. Most cinemas are probably going to be at roughly 4 meters distance. Now, if you want to achieve Dolby reference between your 104, 107, which is just the way the calculation sheet works out, giving the 3 dB increments, at 4 meters, 95 dB is achievable with 16 watts. 98 dB is achievable with 32 watts RMS. 64, 101, blah, blah, blah. I would always say go headroom. So 105 dB you're going to be looking just over 130 watts RMS of power will achieve your 105 dB. However, I would usually always go with that extra power to give you the headroom and control that you need, especially with the dynamics of home cinema. So 250 watts RMS of power will give you a nice controlled sound and achieve your Dolby reference without too much difficulty on a 95 dB sensitive speaker. If, as an example though, you're going into a very large room and your seating position, your key position is 8 meters deep, then you probably want to start looking at a speaker with a higher sensitivity rating, because as you can see here, 512 watts RMS of power with no headroom at 104 dB. To go that extra 3 dB, you're going up to 1024 watts. There's not that many loudspeakers that will cope with that sort of power. So you would go up to a much more sensitive series of speakers. So as an example, in Cricks, they've got the Series X, and they have LCRs with 100 watts dB sensitivity and high, even 101 dB sensitivity. But you can see here right away, 256 watts RMS will give you 106. So if you're putting in 450, 500 watts, you've got headroom, a lot of headroom, and you'll achieve a nice, big, controlled sound. Subwoofers, very much the same, high sensitivity. With these, I would always suggest doubling power. The main reason is subwoofers, generally 105 is for the LCRs. You usually end up wanting that sort of 110, 111 dB of sound pressure level output, the SPL output in a home cinema. So if you're looking at say 112 at 4 meter listening level, 256, I'd be looking minimum of 500 watts RMS of power just to give yourself that little bit of headroom. As an example here, I've put in a typical hi-fi speaker. 90 decibels is a very typical hi-fi loudspeaker. Now, to achieve your 105, if you're in a cinema type scenario, 512 watts RMS, realistically, there's not too many hi-fi speakers are going to cope with that amount of power without putting your tweeter into orbit and certainly putting a lot of stress onto the drivers as well. So this is where the extra sensitivity of a dedicated cinema speaker will really help. I hope this sheet is helpful for you and explains a little bit about that tie-in between power, sensitivity of the loudspeaker, and distance of your key listening position. If you would like a copy of this, please by all means reach out to me on sales@globalavsales.com, and more than happy to send you a copy. And of course, if we know each other already, just drop me a line directly and we can sort you out. And I hope this has been useful. Thanks guys, see you next time.